Here you go, just next to me, here you go.
They are not allowed to force entry. They are not allowed to force entry.
That's just one from outside, yeah. It's obviously show all this stuff in the system
On that turning out to be a false instrument, Criminal Law Act 1960.
This is why you need to get critical illness cover. So a bit of context just in case you don't understand what was going on in the video. So allegedly a cancer victim was getting evicted from the property. That's why there was so much police and bailiffs outside. Now more than likely, and I wish there was a bit more context behind the video, but more than likely this cancer patient stopped paying rent. Because 90% of evictions are because people stop paying rent. Some people do have to get evicted from the property because they're paying rent but they don't want to move. This property I've just bought, yeah, my new 3-bed house, they had to evict the tenant. Not because he weren't paying rent. They wanted to sell and he didn't want to move. He continued to pay the rent but he didn't want to move. So they actually had to evict him allegedly. That's what the estate agent told me. But more than likely, the person, I think it was a woman, they stopped paying rent. That's why they're calling them a cancer victim. They're using the word victim and that to try and obviously build up some sympathy and that. And that's all well and good. But at the end of the day, the banks don't give a shit. So the reason why I'm mentioning the banks and that is because if the tenant is living in the landlord's property, well, obviously the landlord more than likely has a mortgage on the property. Let me tell you something right now. And I've heard my girl say this to plenty of her clients and customers and that. The banks don't care what your excuse is for not paying your mortgage. If you fail to pay your mortgage, at some point you're going to get evicted. That's for the people who are the homeowners who are going to be living there. If you fail to pay your mortgage and it's a buy-to-let, they're going to come and repossess the property. They don't care. They don't care. So why the fuck should a landlord care if his tenant has got cancer? Why? The reason why I'm saying why should the landlord care, at the end of the day, if the banks don't care, why should the landlord care? Now, obviously, I understand that some of you lot are going to think, yeah, but it's going to be a bit more of a personal relationship. Remember, I know my tenants personally. Yeah, the bank don't know me. If I turn up to whatever, I've got bare mortgages with different banks and that, yeah, they don't know who the fuck I am. Yeah, they don't know my face. They never met me like that. But still, so more than likely, the woman got cancer and stopped paying rent. Unfortunately, you gotta leave. Unfortunately, you gotta leave. You gotta go to your local authority. They gotta help you. They gotta sort you out. But let's say, yeah, she got cancer, stopped paying rent and that because she couldn't afford it. If she had critical illness, that would cover it. So you lot should look into getting critical illness cover, even if you're a PAYE employee. You know, if you've got some long-term sickness in that, like obviously cancer and that, you're not just going to be off work for 6 months. I doubt it. I'm sure these things, you know, debilitate you for a number of years and that. I personally don't really know anyone that's, I don't know anyone that's had cancer like that. So, but if you got critical illness cover, that's going to cover you for a very long time, not just 6 months. Because most companies in that, let's say when I worked at Home Saharangi, you get 6 months full pay, and then after that you get half the pay until, you know, the doctor says you're fit to go back to work and that. And funny enough, when everyone used to go off sick at work for stress, yeah, work-related stress, everyone would seem to appear back at work and at their desk or back on the job about 5.5 months into their stress-related sickness and that. Yeah, because they know they're going to get half pay. And a lot of these people, obviously, these lot are big men, big women, they can't sustain their lifestyle off of half pay, but they can off their full pay, obviously. So, yeah, I mean, it is sad that someone got cancer and that, and they can't afford to pay their rent. But at the same time, the banks don't give a shit. Yeah, the bank don't care what happens to me. If I can't pay my mortgage, they're not going to say, oh, don't pay for 6 months, it's cool. No. They ain't going to tell you not to pay your mortgage for 6 months. They don't give a shit. So if the banks don't give a shit, why should the landlord give a shit? So get yourself critical illness, man.